you look at the movie poster for the movie Rudy, it tells you when people say dreams don't come true, tell them about Rudy. And he gets in, and tears are streaming down my face because I'm thinking one thing. If an unathletic kid like that could get into Notre Dame with an insane amount of hard work and resilience, then what I felt was an untalented artist like me will get into Disney with an insane amount of hard work and resilience. And I vowed to never give up again.
Okay, welcome back to the Star Power Podcast. I'm your host, James Barbour. As you know, why? Because my name's in the title. It's James Barbour Star Power. And, I joke, but I have superstars come on, but this is a superstar I met through my buddy Tim Story, who, was like my coach, and he did the first episode of the relaunch of Star Power. And this guy, like, when I say superstar, the stuff he's worked on is just unreal. I'm going to read. For those of you who can see us when you see this live, you're going to see him sitting there. But his bio, it's like he's such a humble dude. And when I was talking to him, I'm like, bro, your bio is like four lines. He goes, yeah, so what? It's so small compared to what he has done. So I'm going to read it to you. And it's my buddy Saul Blinkoff. So Hollywood producer Saul Blinkoff works for many high-profile clients, including, get this, Disney, get this, DreamWorks, get this. I feel like Tim Story, get this, Netflix. And he travels the world as an inspirational speaker, sharing transformative tools of clarity, tenacity, resilience, and discipline to empower others to live their dreams, much like I feel as well. He's an empowering life coach and podcast host of the motivational podcast, Life of Awesome. Saul lives in Los Angeles with his wife and their 4 children, and he loves A Tale of Two Cities. I'm just going to throw that in for all of you Tale of Two Cities fans. Welcome, buddy, to the show.
Thank you, James. Oh, so good to be here. So great to connect with you. The thing about this day and this podcast specifically is, sometimes, I say to my wife, what's my schedule for the day? Because she like manages my schedule.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, you're doing a podcast. And my eyes were like, ah. And she's like, no, 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 no. You're going to like this one. I'm like, who's it with? She goes, it's James. I'm like, what? No way. So I was just so excited because when you and I met, we were brothers instantly.
Instantly.
And it's people who are listening, that when you meet certain people in your life, you just feel a deep connection. And I often reflect on what is that connection. And I think what it is, or at least what I feel is when I met you, I feel like I saw who you really are.
Hmm.
There's no facade. And even though you're an actor, right? And we work in Hollywood and storytellers and movies, when I met you, I just felt like your sincerity and your authenticity just shines through your eyes. And we just hit it off right away. And I'm just grateful that you had me here. And I'm grateful to your audience for tuning in. So thanks for having me.
Buddy, thank you so much. For those of you guys, you wouldn't know this because we talked about it. We were supposed to start the recording of this podcast over actually now well over a half hour ago, but we started talking about Tale of Two Cities.
That's right.
And Saul didn't know that I'd even done it on Broadway. And it's his favorite book. It's my favorite book.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we just spent massive amounts of time deep diving into that.
It
So,
was a religious experience just to connect with you on it. And it's such an honor. Wow.
well, the audiences that came to see the Broadway version, it became a family. So it was a lot of fun. So
Right.
look, here's the thing. Like, again, I asked you like what you want to talk about. And I'm like, what do you want me to use to introduce you? And you're like, yeah, just the bio. And it's so humbling. Like, this is who you are. For those who are listening, this is who Saul is. His bio is literally like 4 lines. But the breadth of work that he has done and the number of people that he has impacted with his work, and dare I say, the speaking that you've been doing, the transformative work that you've been doing, millions upon millions of people you've affected. So I
Thank
just
you.
want you to dive in. Like, why did you do what you do?
The hardest thing sometimes when people, my kids, I have 4 kids. My oldest is almost 20, and then I have a 18-year-old and down to 11. And my kids, they always say it's difficult when one of their friends or someone they meet at camp is like, oh, what does your dad do?
Mhm.
They don't know how to answer it. And they always say to me, Dad, what do you do? And so, yes, I have a podcast and I speak and I work in animation and all these things, life coach, but all of it is the same thing. I do one thing, And what I live for is the opportunity to impact one other person. And I'm not sharing that as some kind of fortune cookie, as a cliche. I'm telling you, it's literally what I live for. So that means everything that I do has to fall into that. So if I get offered a project in animation in Hollywood and I don't think it's in line with the values of what I subscribe to and in making an impact, I don't take it.
Mhm.
No, my goal isn't just to entertain kids. I want to give them something real. If you think about the power of storytelling for a moment, stories have the ability to affect our lives. As a matter of fact, that's actually how I got into this in the first place. I was 11 years old. I grew up in New York, and I'm 11 years old, and I see a movie that changes my life. First of all, before I saw this movie, I love to draw. I was just an artist, like all kids. I love to create. And then I'm 11 years old, and I see this movie here. I'll hum the song or the score from the movie, and let's see if you know it, James. Ready? Here we go. Let's see if my singing voice is, it's not like James, but let me try. Okay. Anyone know? Some of your listeners are like question marks. Some of them are screaming at their radios. Do you know? John Williams, Steven Spielberg's masterpiece, ladies and gentlemen, E.T. Right? So I see the movie E.T. and it's inspiring to me. And I remember watching the movie. And by the way, what's so amazing about that movie, and if you haven't seen the movie, go check it out. It's the story about a boy who ends up being the mature one out of the entire group, even the adults around him. It's the boy that has the sensitivity and the emotion. It's because of the way Steven Spielberg grew up, where he felt like unseen. He was a middle child. His parents were divorced. And that's exactly what this movie is. And by the way, years later, I got to meet Spielberg's mother before she died. And I asked her the question, what is your favorite Steven Spielberg movie? And she whispered to me, E.T. And I said, why? She goes, because that's Steven, because that's him. He put himself in the movie. And by the way, those that are listening, that's a great message to all of us. We need to find ways to put ourselves authentically into our work. What does it mean? It means, oh, I'm cast as a character in a show that's not about anything about my life. But if you don't find something real to connect with that's real, it's not going to break through. In order to break through as storytellers, we need to find something real and sincere from us that we want to share the world. So I watched this movie. James, the credits are rolling. I tap my mom and I say to my mom, Mom, that's what I want to do someday. And she looks down at me. She's like, what, you want to leave planet Earth in a spaceship? And I'm like, no, no, no. Mom, I want to make movies. And so, like I said, I grew up in New York. I didn't know any Hollywood people. I didn't know any movie people. All I knew is when I looked up to that screen, it called to me. So I went to a building that most of you who are listening that have children, your children will never go to this building. It's called a library. They never even heard of it. You see, that's where, as my kids like to say, in the olden days, we used to get information. Yeah, before the internet. You went to a building to find out anything, right? So I go to this library and I get books on cameras, lenses, storyboarding. I find out that Steven Spielberg every weekend makes movies. So I got a film camera. My twin sister Rena, my older brother Jason, kids in the neighborhood, and I started making movies, murder movies, monster movies, kidnap movies. One movie, we tied my sister up to a tree really tight. I'll never forget. We go into the house to watch the movie afterwards, but I left my sister tied to the tree. My mom's like, I like the movie, but where's your sister? I'm like, well, she's still tied to the tree right there. So I was going to be a filmmaker. And then I get to high school. I walk in the halls of high school one day. Somebody comes up to me. They say, Saul, what are you going to do when you get out of high school? I said, I'm going to be a filmmaker. They're like, no, no, you don't want to do that. I said, yeah, I do. They go, no, you don't, because if you want to be a filmmaker, you're going to have to move out to Hollywood. And Hollywood is filled with strange weirdos. They looked at me and said, you don't want to end up a weirdo, do you? And I said, no, I don't. And right then and there, I literally gave up on my dream
Wow.
because one person told me I would end up a weirdo. And, of course, today I do live in Hollywood. And, my four kids would tell you their dad is a weirdo. So much for that. But at that point, I gave up on it. And for everyone listening, I want you to just take a moment and think for a second. It's incredible how many times in our lives somebody will say something and make us believe in ourselves, make us feel encouraged on the path that we dream to aspire to walk on. But then someone else can say something that can make us doubt ourselves. So often in life, we give other people the control over how we feel about ourselves. And if there's one thing to walk away from this episode, remembering, if you have to write it down, you have to write it down. You got to think about it every day. Don't ever let anyone define how you feel about yourself. Don't ever give that control to anyone but you. And so I gave up on that dream, James. Wasn't going to be a filmmaker. I go to another movie that changes my life. But before I did, I'm very lucky because I have very supportive parents. My parents hired an art teacher to come to the house, and she would teach me to draw from life. She'd set up a bowl of fruit, and she'd teach me oil painting and pastel and pencil and all this stuff. And she told me right from the beginning, Saul, drawing is about seeing, developing your eye to look at the world a certain way. It's not copying what's real, it's seeing it real, seeing it through a different lens. By the way, we all choose every day what lens we're going to see the world through. Amazing teacher. So I was going to be an artist. And then I go to another movie that changes my life. All right, James, I want to test your knowledge here. I'm
Oh,
going to
I don't
hum this
know. I don't
song.
know.
I think you're going to get this one. Here we go. The seaweed is always greener in somebody else's lake. You dream about going up there, but up there's a big mistake. Just let you know what it is, right?
I do.
What is it?
It's Little Mermaid.
There you go. There
Yeah.
you go.
I was trying to sing the rest of the song. That's why.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know.
Just look at the world
Under the sea.
around you,
Yeah.
right here on the ocean floor. Such wonderful things around you. What more is you looking for under
Under
the
the
sea?
sea. Yeah, I was literally trying to find the next lyric, not the.
Good. I was hoping you were going to come in earlier and sing, so I didn't have to, but you
Oh,
didn't come in. I would have rather hurt you than me. So I see the Little Mermaid.
yeah.
The credits are rolling. I tap my mom and I go, Mom, that's what I want to do. And she's like, What? You want to fall in love with a fish? I'm like, No, 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 no. I want to work as an animator because animation combined my two passions, my love of drawing, my love of filmmaking, put them together. The Walt Disney Studios were also in Orlando, Florida. I don't have to go out to LA. So there I was, junior in high school, and I knew exactly what my dream was. My dream was to become a Disney animator.
Mm.
I just had one problem. I had no idea how to do it. See, this is before the internet. Want to be a Disney animator? Easy. Go to Google and type it in, and you'll find out how to do it. Before the internet, I didn't have that. But what did I have? The most supportive mother in history. My mom took me, not my older brother, not my twin sister, takes me to Disney World to walk me around Disney World to ask the Disney cast members, that's what they call their employees, how her son could become a Disney animator. We're getting on the It's a Small World boat ride. We're stepping on the boat, and the Disney lady is like, How many in your party? My mom's like, and I'm like, Two. And my mom's like, Excuse me, my son wants to be a Disney animator. Can you help? It was so embarrassing, James. Right. And so we go on a little boat ride.
Which, by the way, I just have to say,
Yeah.
as a parent, oh, as a kid, I never liked, It's a Small World because it was boring. I wanted a big ride. As an adult, when I would take my kids, I loved it
Yeah.
because it was air conditioned and I could chill. So
Yeah,
anyway, go ahead.
it's an air conditioned boat ride. You can chill.
Chill.
I think the same thing, man. See how we change? Isn't
World
that
of
great?
laughter, a world of cheer.
That's written by the Sherman Brothers, by the way.
Was it really?
Yeah, they wrote that. They wrote Winnie the Pooh. They wrote
Winnie
all
the
the
Pooh,
music
yeah.
to Mary Poppins, of course. All
Yeah.
the songs, except for Bare Necessities on Jungle Book, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I think they wrote. I mean, they were
Yeah.
masters,
Prolific. Prolific.
prolific. And so we go into a small world, and after we're done with the boat, the lady comes up to my mom and goes, Listen, if you want your son to work at Disney, he's got to go to the Disney casting building. It was 4 minutes away from where we were in Disney World. So my mom takes me to this Disney office building, and you can't even imagine how beautiful, imaginative, whimsical that this building was. The doorknobs made out of brass were the ones that look like the ones from Alice in Wonderland, the doorknobs that speak. If you remember that scene,
Yeah.
and they were made out of brass with those faces. We open the doors, walk into an atrium, gold statues of Mickey, Donald, Pluto, Goofy. Even the air in that lobby, I will never forget. It had like a smell, like Disney or like pixie dust in the air. It was amazing. Finally, I walk up a ramp. Painted on the ceiling as I'm walking up this ramp is Peter Pan and Wendy flying off to Neverland. And that's exactly where I wanted to go. That's where I wanted to live. I wanted a life of Neverland. I didn't want to grow up. Finally, I sit there and the lady from Disney's like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "Yeah, my dream is to be a Disney animator." She goes, "Well, we don't hire those here." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well, no, we hire people that work the rides, people that hit the buttons to make Space Mountain go or to make the teacups spin around. We hire people that work in the parks." I'm like, "That's not really my dream." She sees I'm discouraged, looks to me and goes, "You know what? Hold on a second." She walks out of the office, comes back in 2 minutes later, and hands me the most valuable piece of paper I have ever held in my hands, other than my wedding contract. You tell my wife I said that, okay? The piece of paper was a list of 8 schools, 8 art schools that Disney recruits their artists from. And she looked at me and said, "If you want to be a Disney animator, you need to go to one of these schools." Boom, that was it. That was the answer key. That was the recipe. You go to a great restaurant, you taste an unbelievable dessert. You want to make it at home, you can do it if you have the recipe. To me, I had the recipe in my hand, and in my head, it was an equation. Saul plus go to one of these schools will equal dream. And by the way, not just dream job, dream life. If you have a career that you're going for or that you're in, make sure that it represents your life. It's your life's work. It's your life's goal. It's your life's vision. There should be no separation from our life, that our career and our home life. It's all the same. It's who am I? And so this was the life that I wanted. So my mom ended up, and my dad sent me to one of the best art schools in the world. It's in Columbus, Ohio, Columbus College of Art and Design. And that first week in school, it was very intimidating. I remember I walked into the room right next to me, and there was a guy that had Mickey Mouse bedspread, Mickey Mouse telephone, Mickey Mouse clock, Mickey Mouse lunchbox. It was like literally Disney World in a room. And the guy wasn't in the room, and I see his stuff, and it's like Mickey Mouse, everything. In the corner, he's got sketchbooks. I'm picking up his sketchbooks to look through it, and it's just hundreds of drawings of Mickey Mouse. And I never drew Mickey Mouse before. I was drawing bowls of fruit. I felt intimidated. I
Oh.
turned to leave the room, and I bump into the guy whose room it is. Uh-oh, I'm busted. I go, "Hey, man, I'm sorry." And he looks at me and goes, "Huh, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm good. What's your name?" He says, "My name's Jason, but people call me Mickey Mouse Jason." I'm like, "They call you what?" He goes, "Mickey Mouse." I'm like, "I heard you. You have a Disney nickname?" He's like, "What? You don't?" I'm like, "No, I don't." I go back to my room. I get on the phone with my mom. I'm like, "Mom, if I'm going to fit in art school, I need Disney stuff." Guys, this is before Pixar existed, before DreamWorks existed. If you wanted a job in animation, it was Disney. And I was surrounded by Disney nerds who knew a lot more about Disney than I did. 1 week later, a representative from the Walt Disney Studios comes to our school to give a presentation on what Disney is looking for in their portfolios. This guy's name was Bill Matthews. He must have been 70 years old at the time. Was one of the original animators on Sleeping Beauty. He
Wow.
used to hang out with Walt Disney himself. The guy gets up on the stage in the auditorium, and the auditorium is filled with every freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. And he looks out to us and he goes, "Let me ask you guys a question. Before I tell you how to get into Disney, how many of you want to work in Disney animation?" Every hand went up. He said, "Well, just so you know, out of the 500 of you there with your hands up, maybe, just maybe 4 of you will ever work there. That's how competitive it is."
Wow.
And when he said that, I thought one thing. I wonder who the other 3 are going to be. You know why? Because in life, you either believe in yourself that you can accomplish or you don't. And I mean, deep down, not what we post on social media, not what we talk about. I mean, deep down, do I really believe that I can accomplish my goal, my dream? And at that point in my life, I did. And then he says, if you want to get into Disney, got to get a portfolio filled with hundreds of drawings of humans and animals drawn from life. No cartoon characters, he said. And especially, he goes, no drawings of Mickey Mouse. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, Mickey Mouse, Jason." And you can see him like slouching his chair in the back, "Oh, boy," But that was really the beginning of it. That was how my dream was established. I was in the right place and I had the motivation to try, you know, to go for it.
Wow.
It was an exciting time.
Let me ask you this because, I have that Disney thing too. Like I had the Mickey Mouse phone. I have all of the big Disney animation books. Like they look like giant, thick.
Yeah, I got them all. I
Oh,
got them all.
fantastic.
They do.
I was a Disney freak, and that was my thing. And whenever the new movies came out, we just lined up, no matter what the movie was. You know,
Yeah,
what
right.
was it about that that propelled you? What was the dream? What was pushing the dream to reach people, to create? What was the
Oh
thing?
man, you're killing me. You're asking the best question. I literally get emotional. I've never been asked this before, by the way.
Oh, wow.
This is a great question. So I told you it was the Little Mermaid, right?
Yeah.
Now, whenever we experience anything in life, we may be eating the same food as somebody or watching the same movie, but it's never the same food and it's never the same movie because at the end of the day, our perspective on everything in life is always unique. There are no two people that will ever have the same experience. So for me, for Saul, when I watched The Little Mermaid, there was one scene, one moment in there. It's Act One. Ariel is this teenage mermaid, and she wants to understand the life around her. And she sings this song. Of course, you remember it, Part of Your World. Jodie Benson singing. And she sings this one lyric, right? She's in her little grove, whatever it is,
Grotto.
underwater. What's it called? It's not a grove, it's
Grotto.
a grotto.
Grotto.
Thank you. She's in her grotto,
Mhm.
and Sebastian's watching her, and she's singing part of your own. I want to be where the people are. I want to see where to see them dancing, walking around on the what do you call them feet? That whole song. And there's one lyric in there where she says, "What's a fire and why does it? What's the word? Burn." You remember that?
Yeah.
So, who's the animator that drew that? Well, most people know the scene, they just don't know the animator who actually did it. His name is Glenn Keane. And Glenn Keane is the Michael Jordan of animators, the greatest Disney animator who ever lived. These are the following characters that he designed and led the animation teams for. You ready? Here we go. The Little Mermaid, that's his character. The Beast and Beauty and the Beast, that's his character. Aladdin, Pocahontas, Tarzan. He did all of these main characters and many more. He's the most incredible. He's not just a great artist, he's an actor with a pencil. Because in animation, it's people think, oh, it's you draw well. No, 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 you have to be an actor. Because you
Wow.
could draw beautifully well, but if you're not an actor, how are you going to know what to make the character do?
I
You
never thought of it that way.
have to be
I never
actors.
thought of the fact that there had to, we're creating a character and we're putting the skin over top of whatever the voice is, but there has to be life behind
Oh my
that.
gosh,
And the
what's the
actor's not
pose?
doing, yeah, oh my
That's
gosh,
right.
never hit me until you just
And
said
by
that.
the way, look at one of the other greatest characters in ever in animation is Ursula, right?
Yeah.
I admit that in the past I've been a nasty. They
Mhm.
weren't killing when they called me well. Think of her acting and her performance.
Yeah.
Do you know who the animator was for that? A 5'3" little Filipino man named Ruben Aquino, who's the most introverted, sweetest, humblest little man you've ever met, who
Wow.
happens to be Ursula. Did
Wow.
you hear how I said that? I didn't say he drew Ursula. He is Ursula because he's one of the finest actors you've never heard of.
Wow.
So Glenn Keane is animating Ariel. And since, I worked in animation at Disney, I can tell you when scenes come to your desk, you have to figure out what that performance is going to be to figure out the acting. So what an average animator for Ariel could have done on that line, what's a fire? She's thinking. What's a fire and why is it? She's thinking, I can't get the answer. What's a fire and why is it? What's the word? Then light bulb goes off. Burn. And she could put her finger up in the air and go, burn. Oh, now I got the answer. Think of it. What's a fire and why is it? What's the word? She can't remember the word. Burn. Oh, now I remember. She puts her finger to her head. I'm just acting now for people
Hmm.
who are listening and not watching. I'm trying.
Yeah.
But that's not what Glenn Keane did. You know what Glenn Keane did? She goes, what's a fire? She's looking at a picture. What's a fire and why is it? What's the word? And for the word burn, she takes her hands, puts them over her chest, arches her back, closes her eyes, and
Ah,
with all of her conviction says the word burn as if the fire is not outside that she wants to understand. The fire is inside her.
wow.
And in that moment, I wasn't watching a movie about some teenage girl mermaid. I was watching a movie about me because I knew that I had a fire in me that I wanted to understand. And what that movie is really about is a character that wants to understand the world. Because the more that we understand the world around us, and that's what wisdom is nothing less than understanding the world around us. Because the more that I understand the world around me, the more I understand my place in the world. And when I saw that movie, that was the impetus for me, the conviction that stories, drawing, art, all of it, poetry, literature, Tale of Two Cities, all of it is really revealing us, who we are. That's got to be the goal. And so that's what started for me my journey. It was that passion, and it was that dream to figure out who I wanted to become. I heard a great line once: "We're not human beings; we're human becomings. We grow, we evolve. The goal of life can never be to have a dream to get somewhere. It has to continue to get somewhere." And by the way, that first week when I was in art school, I'll tell you, I remember going to a party, and at this party, there's some girl who is so thirsty because she's drinking beers out of a funnel. She's so thirsty. She's got to get those beers drunk fast. There's three beers in a funnel she's drinking. And I see next to her, because it is art school, a guy is drawing her drinking beer out of a funnel. So I go over to this guy. I'm like, "Excuse me, dude, what are you doing?" He's like, "I'm drawing." I go, "I know, but what class is this for? Is there an assignment to draw at this party?" He looks at me and goes, "No, no, no. I'm drawing because I'm always drawing because I want to get better." And his name was Andy. And I will tell you, by far, he was the greatest artist in the school because the guy never stopped drawing. And
Mm.
he soon became my best friend. And I will tell you, just me becoming friends with someone like that made me a better artist, because who you choose to be friends with actually affects who you become. So, those people listening right now, think about it for a minute. Who are the people you surround yourself with? James, you mentioned Tim's story.
Yeah.
I had him on my podcast as well. And I asked him on my podcast, "Tim, what do you see as the difference between people who are successful at not just making a living, but people who are successful at making a life?" And he said to me, "It's whoever they have in their green room.
Yeah.
Who's their entourage? Who do they hang out with? Because those are the values that will become our values.
Yeah.
If you're hanging out with someone and they're not pushing, you know what it's like? It's like food. You eat potato chips, you're not getting anything nutrition out of that. It's not bad for you, but it's not good for you either. There's three categories of food, right? You got food that's bad for you, food that's nothing, and then food that actually helps you. It's the same thing with friends. You got those friends in your life that the ones are bad for you, you know about them. Then you got the ones that don't add anything. Get rid of both of those categories. Only surround yourself with the top level, the ones that empower you to grow. And so Andy became that for me. And I will tell you, it affected the rest of my life.
So
So there,
important. I talk about that all the time. Like that
tell
is the
me.
thing. Like I became reasonable in my life. I'd be like, oh, that person, they're cool, and I would stay connected. And I
Yeah,
realized that as much as we might like the person or want to, let's say they need help, but they're going in a different direction. There
yeah,
comes a point where you do have to make a decision because either you hold on and you're going to start going in that direction, even though you want to help them, or you can say, listen, you need to take care of your life, and
right.
you can attach yourself to someone like Andy and start going the other direction. So
Yeah, because when you attach yourself to someone like Andy, you're actually attaching yourself to the real you, to the
right.
potential of you. And the question is, do you want that? Who do you want to become? It's so funny. Like, I'm a dad, I have four kids. When my kids were little, when you took a 6-month-old baby to the park or the beach, and all of a sudden, this happened so many times. It'd be like some other parent come over and they plop their little baby next to my baby. And all of a sudden, the other kid starts eating the dirt or eating the sand. You know what I can do at that point? I can pick up my kid and go, "Okay, we're going to go sit over here." And you can easily pick up your child, move them away because you don't want the influence of the dirt eating kid to affect your kid.
Yeah.
But now my oldest kid is 19. I can't just pick her up away from friends that I may not like for her.
Yeah.
And parents know that. We always know that we want our kids to hang out with the right influences. But it's time for us to ask ourselves a question: who are our influences? Who are we hanging out with?
So
So
true.
Andy was that for me. Sophomore year comes. James, I get my best drawings. I put them in a portfolio. I send them into Disney and I wait. I didn't expect to get in the first time I was trying, but I wanted to go through the process. Couple weeks go by. One day I get a letter on Disney stationery. It's got a gold leaf embossed Mickey Mouse and printed on the envelope. My name is typed on the envelope. That means the Disney company knows that I'm alive. They got my name printed on an envelope. I get my parents on the phone. My mom's like, "You're gonna get in," I'm like, "You have to say that. You're my mom." I open up the envelope. It says, "Saul, thanks for sending your portfolio in, but you didn't make it." I wasn't even discouraged. I put that letter up over my desk. People were coming into the door and, "Wow, Blinkoff, the Disney company knows you're alive." It was awesome. Another year goes by. Andy and I are drawing nonstop. One day, I want to share with you a quick story. We went to the zoo because when you're drawing from life, you got to draw animals from life. When you guys watch a movie like The Lion King, how do you think Disney people know how to draw elephants and things? They don't just wake up with a blank piece of paper and know how to draw. You got to study it. Anatomy books, you got to go to the zoo and draw from life. So it was one day in Ohio, bitter, cold, freezing day. And those people who are listening in California, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But those of you listening in cold places, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Painfully cold. It was that day. There's got to be, I don't know, 14, 15 students. We get on a bus. We go to the zoo. The second we get to the zoo, we all go into the little Wendy's cafe that they had at the zoo. And it's freezing out there. So we're getting hot drinks and things. The boys start flirting with the girls. The girls are flirting with the boys. Everyone's having a good, it's becoming social. After about 2, 3 minutes, Andy and I look at each other and we're like, "Hey, maybe we should go draw." We sharpen our pencils. We walk outside and we find an elephant. And this elephant was like literally performing. It was amazing. Walking back and forth, his head, the trunk was amazing. So we freezing sat there, following after him, drawing pictures of this elephant for 45 minutes. Afterwards, we get onto the bus. I'm showing Andy what I drew. He's showing me what he drew. I looked to one of the other guys. I'm like, "Hey, man, we never saw you with the elephants. What animals were you drawing?" The guy looks up to me and he goes, "None of us ever left the Wendy's, the cafe." I'm like, "What do you mean you didn't leave?" He goes, "We couldn't leave." I said, "What do you mean you couldn't leave?" He goes, "We couldn't leave. It was too cold." I'm like, "It was too cold." Do you know that those were the greatest words I ever heard in my life? Because I will tell you, at that moment, I knew something with complete clarity. I knew that someday I would get my dream and that they wouldn't. Because how bad do you want it? Is it easy to dream? Oh, yeah. Easy to talk about what you want? Yeah. You know what's difficult? Doing the work to get it.
100%.
And let me tell you, turn on a documentary about anybody that inspires you. Look, I'm a big Michael Jordan fan. I grew up in the 90s. And I will tell you, I've watched The Last Dance, the documentary about Jordan and the Bulls, 6 times, one for each of his rings. And every time I watch that documentary, I walk away with the same thing. Man, did that guy push through pain. But here comes the magic. If you want to be great at something, the other day, my son asked me, "Dad, I want to join the track team. Do you think it'll be easy?" I said, "It depends how good you want to be. You want to be good at it? It'll be easy. You want to be great at it? It's going to be hard. You want to be the greatest track runner who ever lived on the planet? You're going to have to bleed. You're going to have to sweat. How bad do you want it?" And the magic is if you have the clarity that something is going to be difficult, if you're going to be great at it, you don't have to go through pain at all. That's right. You don't have to go through pain. You get to grow through pain. And if you're not growing, it's not painful. And if it's not painful, you're not growing. That was it. So Andy and I took our drawings, put them in a portfolio, sent them into Disney. And at this point, everybody in the school knew if there's two guys that are getting in, it's going to be Saul and Andy because these guys are unstoppably working. Is that even a word? Unstoppably are
It is
unstoppable.
now. Yeah.
So we send our portfolios in, and it's Christmas break. I go home to New York. Andy goes back to Mississippi where he grew up. He calls me up on the phone. I'll never forget it. He calls me up on the phone. He's like, "Dude, you're not going to believe this." I'm like, "What am I not going to believe?" He goes, "I just got a call from the Walt Disney Studios." I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I got in. I got the internship." I'm like, "That's amazing. Congratulations." I couldn't believe it. He's like, "But you didn't hear anything yet, did you?" I'm like, "No. But they could be trying to call me right now. I got to hang up." We didn't have call waiting back then. So I hang up the phone. I'm pacing back and forth in the dining room with my parents. The phone's not ringing. I'm like, "Mom, you paid the phone bill, right? There is a dial tone. Why are they not calling?" Do you know what I did? I pick up the phone and I dial the head of Disney myself. Who does that? I did. Because when there is something you want in your life, you'll do anything to get it. Look, I told you about my love for Michael Jordan. The greatest of all time. Anyone has a problem with that? You think it's LeBron? There's another podcast for you down the street. Go check it out. Michael Jordan. It's in the 90s. I'm 15 years old, living in New York, Madison Square Garden, before one of the games. True story. I'm standing next to the court. Jordan has those breakaway warm-up pants on. He's warming up on the court. I said to my older brother, Jay, I'm like, Jay, I'm gonna go walk out there and meet Michael Jordan. My brother's like, you're not going anywhere. Before he could finish that sentence, I walk out on the court. I'm standing in the middle of the court and I look up to MJ and I go, hi, Mr. Jordan. And he looks down at me and says, quote, yo, how you doing? End quote. And he shook my hand. This one right here. Never washed. Still has the sweat of Michael Jordan. You know why I walked out there? Because when there's something you want in your life, you'll do anything to get it. So I call up the head of Disney. I get this guy on the phone. I'm like, hi, my name is Saul. He goes, Saul Blinkoff. I'm like, yeah. He goes, I have your name on a list here. I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, you didn't make it. I go, what? He goes, yeah, you didn't get in. I go, well, what about Andy? He goes, yeah, he got in. You didn't. I was like, okay, thank you. And I hung up the phone. And that was a bittersweet moment for me. You know, look, sweet, I was happy for my best friend, but bitter, my dream was shattered. Andy's going to Disney World, happiest place on earth. You know where I'm going back to? Ohio in the wintertime. What I felt was the most depressing place on earth. And when I get back to school, I'm walking the halls and people are coming up to me, Blinkoff. Oh, you didn't make it. Oh, where's Andy? Oh, he got in. You didn't. I became known as the guy that was friends with the guy that got into Disney. I literally became known as the guy who did not get his dream. And let me tell you how I felt. I felt like a loser. I felt like a failure because everyone knew me as the guy who had this big dream. And now they knew me as the guy that was rejected twice. And I couldn't stand that feeling, James. I couldn't stand the feeling of being a failure. And then I did something incredible to take that feeling of being a failure away. And everyone listening right now, by the way, you can forget everything I've said up until now. Walk out of here with one idea from this day that you will remember for the rest of your life. Do what I did, and the feeling of of being a failure goes away like that. You know what I did? I gave up. That's right. I gave up on the entire dream. Instead of being the guy who didn't get his dream, I took away the dream because now I'm not a failure because I don't want anything great. And if I stuck to that today, I would have a life of mediocrity. And by the way, that applies to every part of our lives.
Mhm.
If you're married out there, what kind of marriage do you want? You want the average one? Do you want the good one? Or do you want the great one? You want the great one or do you want the awesome one? The question is, how great do we want to be? And what are we willing to do for it? Well, I gave up on that dream. Too hard. Too hard. Every single one of us has a voice that tells us that we can accomplish, we can change the world. We can be great. We have another voice that screams at us, who do you think you are? It's for people that are talented. It's not for people like you. You're too average. Don't even strive for that. It's not for you. And that's what I listen to. A week later, a buddy calls me up and says, Saul, I got tickets to go see a movie. You want to go? I'm like, I'm not in the mood. He goes, but they're free. I'm like, okay, I'll go. They offer you free in college? You take it. So, James, I go to a third movie that changes my life. I see a movie. It's a true story about a guy who's 5 feet tall. He doesn't have an ounce of athletic ability, and his dream is to play football at Notre Dame. What movie?
Rudy.
Rudy. Yeah. You see, that's how you know how old someone is.
Yeah.
Because if they're anyone under the age of 20 is like, Rudy, what? They never even heard of it.
Yeah.
It's an amazing movie, right?
Unbelievable film. It's an incredible film.
And it's a true story.
Yeah.
And listen carefully. The guy's 5 feet tall. He's not even athletic, and his dream is to play football at Notre Dame. If you were friends with the real Rudy Rudiger and he told you his dream, you know what you would have told him as his friend? Dude, I love you. Get a new dream. But Rudy was like, yeah, we'll just see about that. He tries to get into Notre Dame, rejected. Tries a second year, rejected. Third time, rejected. But fourth time, if you look at the movie poster for the movie Rudy, it tells you when people say dreams don't come true, tell them about Rudy. And he gets in, and tears are streaming down my face because I'm thinking one thing. If an unathletic kid like that could get into Notre Dame with an insane amount of hard work and resilience, then what I felt was an untalented artist like me will get into Disney with an insane amount of hard work and resilience. And I vowed to never give up again. As a matter of fact, I called up Disney the next day. I get the same guy on the phone. I go, "Hi, this is Saul." He goes, "Yeah, I already told you you didn't make it." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but let me ask you a question. How close was I?" He goes, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, how many people did you pick? And from how many portfolios?" He said, "Saul, we picked 17 artists from almost 4,000 portfolios from around the world, and you made it to number 20." What? I'd only missed it by three. Do you know how many times in our lives we could be so close to achieving our goal, but we feel we're miles away, and all we needed to do is press on a little bit more? And then I asked him the billion-dollar question: why did I not get in? You see, when we fail in life, and we will, because that's what it means to be a human being, failure is nothing less than the opportunity to learn.
Mhm.
That's what failure is. As a matter of fact, if you don't fail, you'll never learn. And I said, why did I not get in? He goes, "Can I be honest?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "You need more perspective in your drawing." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Instead of drawing people and animals from wherever your eyes are, stand on a stool or a ladder or go down low and look up. Give us a dynamic perspective." Boom.
Wow.
Answer key. I put all new drawings in a portfolio, sent them into the Walt Disney Studios, and just a couple weeks later, I get a call from Andy. "Hey man, what's up?" He's like, "Blinkoff, you're not gonna believe this." I'm like, "What am I not gonna believe?" He goes, "They just built a brand new wing on the animation studio for the next intern." So I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, you deserve to be there." I'm like, "Thanks, buddy." He goes, "But they did one other thing." Like, what they do? He goes, "They put up a piece of paper with a list of the next interns." I'm like, "Yeah," and he goes, "You're on the list." I
Yeah.
go, "What?" He goes, "Dude, you did it." I'm like, "Thank you." He's like, "What are you thanking me for? You did it." I hang up the phone. I go over to my tape player. Those people listening under the age of 20, tapes used to play music. And at the top of my lungs, it's the circle of life and it moves us all. Right. I'm screaming. I get on the phone with my mom. She hears it in my voice. She's like, "Honey, did you do it?" I said, "No, mom, we did it. Mom, we did this together. You're the one that supported me. You're the one that took me to Disney. But mom, this winter, you can stay in New York because I'm going to the happiest place on earth." And I got my dream at Disney. I was on the internship when you wish upon a star. I started working on the film Pocahontas, then on to Hunchback, Mulan, Tarzan, and the rest is history. But I want everyone listening to walk away with one idea. Please, I'm begging you, do not think you heard a story today of a really talented artist that got into Disney. That is not what this is. This is nothing less than the story of the worst artist in his school who got his dream of working at Disney, because nobody wakes up great at anything. Nobody wakes up great at anything. We all have a potential and a purpose to strive to our level of greatness. The question is, what are we willing to invest for every aspect of life? And that's when it began. That's when it began. Just telling you
Wow.
that story now, the emotions come back to me. I still can't believe it.
Bro,
Still feels,
there's so many parallels to, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story because I, I, when I wrote the book that I wrote called The Art of Survival Guide, it went to number one on Amazon during COVID.
wow.
And it's not about, it's about artists and art, but it's not about, it's about the perseverance and the drive and the looking beyond.
Yeah.
Because the first line of the book is, you will fail.
Wow.
You'll give
Wow.
up, get a real job,
Right.
right? And I
It's
say,
a fact. Right.
it's a fact, but it's also the things that people tell us. And then it becomes the things that we tell ourselves.
Mm,
And if
mm,
we give up in the face of that adversity, you will never get to where you want to go. This
beautiful.
was so powerful that you
Beautiful.
shared this. And
Thank you.
incredible. So I mean, we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to, I want to talk about where you are now because,
Mm,
you know, you've been on many stages. You're on the Aspire stage. That's actually where we met. Uh,
yeah, it is. Right.
and you know, you're taking this message and you're affecting lives,
Thank you.
not just from behind the scenes, the unknown animator. You're
Mm,
now saying, this is what you need to do, and this is who I am.
yeah.
Hear that a little bit about what you're doing.
I'll tell you, if I went back to myself now, if I could go back to myself in a time machine, when I got rejected from Disney the second time, my life felt like tragically it was over. It
Hmm.
really felt that way. And you know what I would tell myself if I went back to myself when I was in that despair and that sorrow? You know what I would tell myself? Saul, grow up.
Hmm.
Grow up. You think life is about just working at Disney? You know the people that are in pain out there in the world? There's greater tragedies than if you don't get to draw Mickey Mouse at Disney. You see, look, I'll use a movie as an example. Okay, here we go. The Lion King. Simba and the Lion King. He tells you what he wants. He wants to be king someday. He sings the song, I just can't wait to be king. And then something happens to dad. Spoiler alert. It's 30 years ago the movie came out. You deserve to have it spoiled if you haven't seen it. He dies, and Simba goes off and lives in Hakuna Matata world, right? Remember? Hakuna Matata, what a wonderful phrase, right? You're not gonna sing with me, James. You're gonna make me ruin the people's ears again with my voice. Come on, man. So he sings Hakuna Matata, right? Hakuna Matata, do you remember what it means? What does
No
those words
worries
mean?
for the rest of
Means
your days.
no worries for the rest of your days. Do you know who wants a life of no worries? All of us.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you don't want a life of worry, don't get married. If you don't want a life of worry, don't have children because you're going to worry. That's what life is. But Simba goes off and lives in Hakuna Matata world, and it's beautiful. It's lush. There's a waterfall. He sleeps in a hammock, hangs out in a jacuzzi. And at the end of the movie, who shows up and finds him there? Do you remember who shows up? Who shows up?
Isn't it what's her name?
Nala. Yeah.
Nala. Yeah.
What's her name? So she shows up and they sing their song, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? Right? They're rolling around. There's that
Hey, Apple,
scene.
don't knock me down for rights. We're doing less than 5 seconds.
That's right, for fair use.
Yeah.
And they sing their song, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? And there's that scene when they're about to, it's actually a little weird when when the Simba and Nala, they're about to like make out.
Yeah.
Remember that scene? Their heads are
Yeah.
going, we always cover our kids' eyes when that. My daughter was once like, Dad, they're just lines. I'm like, still inappropriate. Look
Yeah.
away. So after they roll around and sing their song, they have a conversation. And she says to him, Simba, it's so good to see you, but you got to come back with me. And Simba's like, what do you mean? Hakuna Matata, look where I live. Look where I live. Why would I leave this? She's like, maybe I didn't make myself clear. Scar has taken over everything. And if you don't come back with me, everyone is going to die. And you are responsible. Then you know what he says? Hakuna Matata. I'm staying right here. She's like, what do you mean? When are you going to grow up? She sings it. Why won't he be the king I know he is, the king I see inside? What she's really saying is, when are you going to grow up? When are you going to live your potential? You know who she's really talking to? All of us.
Yeah.
When are we going to wake up? When are we going to wake up and see what the potential of life is? The potential of a year, a week, a day to grow. And she leaves him there. He's left alone. Then who shows up? Rafiki hits him on the head. Remember?
Hmm.
And then Simba looks up after he sees his reflection, looks up to the sky, sees his father in the clouds, hears the voice, remember who you are. And Simba goes back, defeats Scar, and Lion King becomes the biggest animated movie in history, BF,
Hmm.
before Frozen. Let me tell you why it became the biggest animated movie in history. Not because we all wake up with a huge craving for stories about lions. No, it's because that story, that movie gave us a viewpoint that was so powerful. If we want to be great in life, there's one way. We need to have this singular mission. Life is not about no worries. Life is about how do I use my passions and abilities to take responsibility for the world? Simba goes back, defeats Scar, and it becomes this huge movie. And that's the message for all of us, especially the artists that are listening. It doesn't even matter. Every one of us has an ability. But what do we do with that ability? We have to respond where there's a need. Responsibility is wherever in life I have the ability to respond.
Mm.
And that's what we have to go for in life. Because at the end of the day, if you ask everyone in the world, what do you want out of life? They'll tell you, I want a life of happiness. Why would you settle for a life of happiness when you could have something so much sweeter?
Yeah.
You see, a life of happiness is usually contingent on outside experiences. If I meet my soulmate, I'll be happy. If I get another zero on my bank account, yeah, then I'll be happy. Don't settle for a life of happiness when you can have something so much sweeter. And that is a life of meaning. And a life of meaning is, how do I take my passions and abilities and my pain and my trauma and everything that I've felt and experienced in my life, and how do I bring it together to impact humanity? That's what life is about. And that's what I try to do right now. I try to share those messages and get people to feel empowered and engaged and inspired. But be careful, because inspiration comes and goes. It slips through our fingertips. One moment you're inspired, the next minute, what did she say? What did he say? You see, it's one thing to be inspired, it's another to live inspired. But that's got to be our goal. And if you do that, you don't settle for a life that's good. You don't settle for a life that's great. You have a life that's awesome.
This is awesome. This is it's
Thanks,
really like, bro, like I'm sitting here going,
bro.
can you coach me? Like,
By the way, you know the first guest I ever had on my podcast is the real Rudy Rudiger. How cool is that?
whoa.
Yeah, and he didn't even know
I
he was
thought I
getting
did well
into
with Tim's story. Man, you got Rudy.
it. I had Rudy on there, and what was so beautiful for me is that I got to share with him how his story impacted my life.
Wow.
And that's the thing we have to remember. Like, our story that we're all living individually has such an opportunity to impact another person's story. It's such a beautiful thing that we get to experience, you know?
Incredible. So how, like, let's end with this because I mean, bro, I need to have you on for part two and part three and part four. Um, like because you're doing this with people. I mean, are like first of all, how do people find you? Obviously, your website, saulblinkoff.com. Like what's
SaulBlinkoff.com. Yeah, and you can check me out there for speaking and everything that I do. And also, look, I'm on Instagram, Saul, Saul dot Blinkoff. And I'm always sharing ideas about parenting and marriage and relationships and just how to strive for an awesome life every day. If somebody comes up to you and they say, "How's things going?" Most people are like, "Yeah, it's good. Life's good." But if they come up to you and go, "How's things going?" You go, "How are things going? Let me tell you how things are going. Things are awesome." They'd be like, "Wow, what happened? Did you win the lottery? Did you just get cast in a movie?" What if you were like, "No, no, no. It's just awesome because it's awesome to be alive." I want to bring that to every day. I want every day that I wake up and people that I interact with to feel the beauty of life every single day. As a matter of fact, I don't know when you're releasing this episode, but this week I am launching a 1 day event. It's a 1 day, 2 hour event where I am going to share all the tools that I've learned and the mindset specifically for students. It's literally going to be targeted for students, college students, post-college students, undergrad students, any kind of animation student, film student, law student, it doesn't matter. Any student that wants that extra edge to be able to accomplish that dream, that's what this is for.
where do they go?
And
Because
so you can,
tell
yeah,
me.
go to my website, saulblinkoff.com,
Okay.
and all the details will be up this week.
I got to tell you something
Um,
funny. When my
yeah.
like, who are you interviewing? He's like, oh, it's my buddy Saul Blinkoff. She goes, why do I know Saul Blinkoff? I'm like, well, I don't think you've ever met him. She goes, no, no, no. He's all over. I see him all the time on my Instagram. I see him.
What?
Yeah, I swear to God. She's like,
What the heck? Are you serious?
yeah, yeah. Literally, it's popping up all over her Instagram.
Holy
It's so
cow.
funny.
Please
I was like,
apologize to
hi.
her for me.
No, she
But she
loved it.
sees me too much. Wow,
No,
that's
she
really
loved it. I see it too, but I follow you. So
that's really, really sweet that you shared that. Thank you. That means a
yeah.
lot. As you know, look, social media is hard. Got to put yourself out there. You got to be vulnerable. You got to post. It's a
Yeah.
it's a hard thing.
Well, you know what I
But
did? Just to
yeah,
little insight, um, is I created this thing because there are a lot of people who are trying to build businesses or trying to build followings, and they're not Brad
right,
Pitt, and they're not, these people who have huge,
right.
exposure, and they don't have a lot of money to do ads and all this kind of stuff. So I did some testing a while ago on Facebook groups. Now, it's not the demographic for the younger generation,
Yeah,
but Facebook groups still work. And we tested it, and my wife is a major ballerina, then did Broadway
right,
shows, and then got into the
right.
fitness industry. So the fitness industry is one of the most saturated markets. So we created
Wow.
some groups, and I tested it out, all the things I learned. Within 3 weeks, with no ad spend, we had 4,000 people wanting to be in the group, asking to be
Whoa,
in the group, and
whoa.
in 3.5 weeks, we had 475 email addresses, contacts given to us without going, hey, we're going to give you something. So,
Wow.
and it was a way to organically grow an audience without spending a dime. It just takes a little bit of time and not a lot of time.
Yeah.
But
That's amazing.
it's pretty
Thanks for
cool.
sharing that. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
I'll
awesome.
tell you, I'll share it with you, off
Please, yeah.
the
Thank
podcast.
you so much. Yeah.
But I want to share this with people. I'm going to put it out in time for people to join in if they want to. So you're going to go to saulblinkoff.com.
Yeah,
Buddy, I can't
the
thank
event
you.
is October 13th, but we're going to start promoting it next week, so you'll have
Yeah,
time.
plenty of time. Yeah, this is going to go out. This is now we're recording this September 6th. It's going to go out next week. So you'll have plenty of time.
Cool.
Yeah. I got to
I
tell
have
you, by the
so
way, not only are we
yeah.
connected with, all of our stuff, but we have the same chair, just different colors.
Oh my gosh, there it
So
is. How
funny.
great
Like
is this?
I'm
I
gonna,
got
for
this.
those of you who are not watching, I'm in a black t-shirt. This is Tommy Harris's shirt, by the way. It says Endure with a black Herman Miller chair, and you're in a white t-shirt with an off-white Herman Miller chair. It's so funny.
Right, right. Actually,
Anyway,
light pink, but
is that? Oh, it's light pink.
but maybe your computer isn't
My
calibrated like
colors. Well,
mine.
look, my face is like bright red. It's my reflection. Yeah, thanks.
I just have to tell you again, I'm so grateful to know you, that you invited me to be here. And I'm also just so grateful to everyone who's tuned in and listened. I just want to tell all of you who are listening, you should take a lot of pleasure, each of you, that you show up to a podcast like this and that you're spending your time and investing it in yourself. And you should take pleasure in that accomplishment because there's so many things that are pulling us in different directions. TV shows that people are like, oh, you got to watch this. And there's so much we can be doing and scrolling and scrolling. But the fact that you tune into something like this, where you're hoping to hear some inspiration from James and his guests and other people that you go listen to, is a real credit to each of you. And you should take pleasure in that accomplishment. I wish all of you a continued life of such success and growing and a taste of that awesome potential that each one of you has the ability to tap into.
Well, my brother, I cannot thank you enough for being here and sharing your story. I'm going to take us out. Like, listen, I say this, what I say, and if you don't, you're going to hear it again. Your destiny is waiting. It's up to you to go out and get it. So thank you for being here, and we'll see you on the next one. If you like the content of Star Power, we'd love to hear it. Give us a like and share it out to your friends.